Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Goodman. And guess what? Before we begin, we have a very special guest.
Woo! Doc Searles, I actually have no less than, I think, at least 5 WordPress blogs that I'm writing right now. And I'm really excited to be here with Matt Mullenweg. He's going to have this stage now. At 3:30, I'm going to be over with Josh Klein in the other classroom there, talking about code as culture and how the wonderful bubble that we're in right now is going to burst eventually. So getting really excited about that. So with that, up comes Matt.
So go see Doc Searles over there in 20 minutes. Now, what a treat to have Matt Mullenweg here. He's the founder of WordPress, such a hugely influential blogging platform, as we all know. And he's going to tell you all about the facts and figures. I'll just tell you he's one of Vanity Fair's most influential, I think it's the Next Establishment list. He's member of Forbes' 30 Under 30. His Audrey Capital has backed 30 companies and has made him one of the Forbes' most influential angels on Angel List. And here's something you probably don't know. He's a Dvorak keyboard user, and he can type over 120 words per minute. Thank you very much. All right, today he's going to offer insights into how mobile is giving companies, and tons of huge companies are using WordPress, obviously, not just individuals. Mobile is giving companies a chance to reinvent themselves. And he's going to talk about his plans to recreate the WordPress experience on a bunch of different platforms. So please give a warm welcome to Matt Mullenweg.
Well done.
Thank you.
Give him hell.
Hello, hello. There was a little bit of an intro already, but howdy. As he said, my name is Matt Mullenweg. These are my relevant details. My WordPress is ma.tt. My Twitter is photomat. If there is anything tweetable during this event. I'm here with you today because, as you said, I'm the co-founder of something called WordPress, an open source project, and the founder of a company called Automattic. Many people have trouble understanding the difference between WordPress.com, WordPress.org, so we made a simple chart that kind of helps explain it all. It's actually a little simpler than that. Basically how it works is Automattic is a for-profit company that runs WordPress.com, which is a hassle-free way to get a blog. Then there's WordPress.org, which is software anyone can download and modify and have complete control over, and you can run it anywhere. So you can run it on GoDaddy, Bluehost, Rackspace, anywhere on the web, and you control literally every line of code that executes. And it's open source software, which means that you have freedoms associated with it. You have just as many rights to the software as I do, as one of the founders. And then in the middle, we have this new thing called Jetpack, which is basically the way to give you the best of both worlds. So that allows you to run your own WordPress anywhere you want and control all the code. But you still can get the features that are hard to do if you're running on, like, say, Rackspace, like making it so it auto-posts to Twitter and Facebook when you do a new blog post, or infinite scroll, or even things like cool mobile themes, some of the stuff we'll talk about. So that's basically the realm of it. I'm going to be talking about both .com, .org, and WordPress, which is kind of an umbrella term. I'm very proud of WordPress at this moment in particular because on Monday, May 27th, we are turning 10 years old. We are celebrating in true open source fashion with parties all over the world, over 400 so far. I'm pretty sure there'll be one in New York. There's a few people here, right? A few WordPress users? Who like the party? I'm very much looking forward to Monday night, celebrating with everyone. Not so much to Tuesday morning. But it's been an exciting run. If you go to meetup.com/WordPress, you can get all the information about that. 10 years ago, when we started WordPress, we could have never anticipated the growth that's even happened. Although 10 years is like 150 internet yields, and most projects don't make it that long. When we first started, there was really no grand ambitions. It was really just to create a better blogging software for the few people who were using it. Literally 5 or 10 users doing, call it 5 or 10 downloads a day at that point, probably us re-downloading it over and over, to where it's come to today, which is there's now over 18.2% of the top 10 million websites being powered by WordPress. And that's gone up about 2% in the past 6 months. So we're really starting to capture more of our vision, which was to democratize publishing, to make it as easy for any person here in this audience to run the exact same software that Wired.com or New York Times does for their blog. The next big thing, so what I want to talk about was that WordPress traditionally has been in a desktop paradigm. But as many people know, everything's shifting to touch and mobile. So I'm going to talk about 3 things. There's first I want to talk about the traffic that's happening to the WordPress.com network, basically Automatic and all its properties. Across 2.9 billion visits in the past month, almost a quarter, 25% globally, 23% globally, were from mobile devices, which has grown very, 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 very quickly. That's growing anywhere from 5 to 8% per month. So this is kind of what I'm going to talk about. Business in front, party in back, the front and the back end. They didn't call me Mullenweg in elementary school for nothing. And then the challenges that open source and mobile faces, because as you probably know, this mobile revolution has basically been absent of any open source presence. Very few open source apps on mobile devices. So I'm going to talk about that and perhaps how we can change it. So first in front, this is where the best news is happening. So when it comes to the front end of sites, we're seeing sort of a revolution in how themes are made, that they're being much more responsive. Here's one example from Theme Foundry. You can just go through these. This is Rue from Automatic. And as you can see, across different devices, the design just translates beautifully to whatever it is, a concept called responsive, which many of you are very familiar with. It is even coming in our every year WordPress does a new default theme. So in 2013, which is the latest, does this pretty well. And in fact, if you want to see an example of this, just an hour ago, I relaunched my personal blog, ma.tt, using a 2013-based theme. 2013 meets Rothko, kind of, that's using this. So you can check this out. It's grown to the point where there's now a huge number of, not just of the sort of more savvy theme developers doing this, but also media websites, including Vice. I should have checked if Vice is mobile. You've seen Smashing Magazine, but now when you look at it on sort of a tablet or mobile, looking pretty good. Even older school systems like Time have now gotten much better at adapting to different devices. Remember when they used to redirect you to one of those terrible mobile sites, and you'd click on a permalink and it put you back on the home page, and how horrible that was? Even if you're under the influence, you can now do a good responsive site. As our good friend and WordPress fan, Snoop Lion, shows us. There's now over 265 themes in the free theme directory, and about 42% of all the themes on WordPress.com are fully responsive. So that meaning it's not a mobile theme. You get the whole design, your custom headers, your images, everything translated beautifully using just the power of CSS. And in fact, this is where, for the new stuff, it's even higher. It's about 94% of the new themes we've launched this year have responsive. So basically, we're saying every new thing that goes on WordPress.com and all these new themes that we're making available for download are going to be responsive by default. Now for the party and back. Oh, one more thing. For themes that don't have it, we have this cool mobile theme called Mini 11. Basically, it's an idea to take themes that aren't mobile optimized yet and make them look good and fast for pictures of your cat. There's been over 350 million pages of just a Mini 11 theme out of about 1 billion pages in the past month, again, coming just purely from mobile devices. That's actually just purely from phones, not even counting all tablets. Growing at 5 to 8% per month. So let's go to the back end now, the WordPress admin. This is kind of the first time we're talking about this project publicly. There's a plugin that a few WordPress insiders have been using called MP6. And basically, the idea behind MP6 was to take some of the development we were doing and move it out of the core. And so basically, for those of you familiar with open source projects, there's about a dozen people who can commit to WordPress and change the code. Kind of like the oracles at the top of the mountain. And all the code that goes into the core WordPress that powers tens of millions of websites goes through these people. What we're trying to do is actually shift development to be a little bit more open. So by developing features as plugins first, using WordPress's super flexible architecture, we can try something out with different people without worrying about whether it's going to work or whether we're going to break a quarter of the web when we ship something. and just have a little bit of fun. So that's what MP6 has been. The challenge has been, can we reimagine the WordPress admin, which has, again, evolved over 10 years largely for desktop interfaces, for resolution independence, for example. So this is the old WordPress icons, which pixelated, old school, reimagined as simpler vector-based art that works great on any device. The resolution independence is actually one of my favorite parts. Who has a Retina laptop in the audience? We got a couple. It is the coolest thing on earth. It's like everything in your world goes HD, except a lot of websites haven't been updated to it yet. So as you can see, these are not photoshopped versions. This is just literally a zoomed-in web page. So you can zoom in or zoom out these new graphics and interfaces as much as you like, and they work really beautifully. So we got all that out of the way, and then we said, well, what can we do to make the admin more responsive? So just for every single WordPress install in the world, when you log in from a different device, how will it work? And more touch-friendly. Did you see that move right there? So this is sort of an example of what happens. You can try this at home. So just search for MP6 on the plugin directory, install it, so you can install it in one click, and then just start to resize the browser. So you see, as you make it more narrow, the layout of the page changes, again, using pure CSS. Menu collapses, goes even smaller, until you get a very app-like interface. If you notice, there's a hamburger, as everyone calls it, menu in the top left. I don't know why people call it a hamburger. It's 3 lines. That would be a terrible hamburger. But it is what it is. Menu that then pops out the traditional thing. So the fun thing is now, what's been tricky about the native app so far is that, let's say you have a plugin that adds new things to your admin. It's very, very difficult for a plugin, of which there are now more than 25,000 in the WordPress ecosystem, to modify a native mobile app. So this basically gives you the best of an app interface with the flexibility forwarded by plugins. These are some examples of the screens. Again, they're looking pretty good. And this is where you can get it, wordpress.org/plugin/mp6. WordPress insiders will note that we no longer have extend in the URLs. That's a little bit of inside baseball. I think that responsive, I'm an old web standards guy. Like, I got into this whole thing because of Zeldman talking about web standards 11, 12 years ago. I believe that web standards are the futures of everything, except when they're not. We and other folks, Facebook most notably, have tried to embrace sort of mobile web HTML5 driven apps as much as possible, and I think it's very important to. Like I just said, this MP6 effort has had over a dozen people actively contributing it. Open source people love the web. They like working on it. They like hacking on it. But there's some things we just can't do yet. And that brings us to the last part, where I'm going to talk about our mobile apps, sort of what we've done so far and where they're going. So first we'll talk about iOS. The main thing with our older iOS stuff, this is what it looked like in the original. Remember that old school kind of straight thing that Apple put on everything? We went exactly to the Apple guidelines, right? They published these guidelines, how to make a good app, and we followed it exactly. But the problem is you end up looking like kind of the email client. And in fact, even when we added like iPad support, that could be a screenshot of the email application, couldn't it? So where we started to evolve, we added things like stats, like some more notifications and things like that. But really where it started to evolve was making the app more sort of menu and action-centric. So adding things like the ability to post a photo with 1 or 2 clicks, we found has been a huge, huge, huge feature. And it, funnily, this is it on the iPad, it ends up looking a little bit more like the web interface. In fact, you'll notice a lot of similarities. Android followed a similar, this is where, I'll come back to that. Android followed kind of a similar path. So again, embarrassing older photos of it. It's kind of like looking at photos of you when you were in elementary school. As you can tell, not the prettiest thing out there. But it evolved. We became more action-centric. Again, started to put instead of making it sort of, here's blogs, here's a post, here's a list of things, saying, what are the things you want to do most quickly, and putting those just a button away. And today we have something that's actually now featured by Google in the store and everything like that. Actually, for the Apple app, if you ever want to try it and you're not a WordPress user, it's built into every single iPad and iPhone device in every Apple store in the world. So you know, it's one of the demo apps. So you can go in, it's kind of fun. I'll go to other countries like Italy or something and just go to the Apple Store, start flicking around. It's also a really cool way, if you're a contributor to WordPress, to show your friends what you actually do, because it's very difficult to understand. We've got 4 main apps under development: Windows Phone, Android, iOS, and BlackBerry. The only other native app development we're doing right now is for Windows 8, which is actually, believe it or not, the fastest growing of all of them except for Android. I don't know why. Any Windows 8 users here? Not one? Wow, that's incredible. Okay. Any WordPress users here? Okay, good. This is the right talk. Through all of this, what became interesting is that, again, this evolution of thought, of thinking of taking our bigger interface and maybe squeezing it down to a smaller screen, thinking about it action-centric was sort of the middle step. But really what it became to be obvious is that when people are on the go, they're just interacting with the applications in a different way. They're in line at, a cool coffee shop, something cooler than Starbucks, since you guys are neat. And they have just like 30 seconds that they want to look at something and be entertained immediately. So you need something social. It's a lot more consumption than there is production. Besides photos, it's not pleasant to write something really long on their phone. We've all gotten those emails you can tell someone wrote on their phone, kind of typo-ridden and a little bit passive-aggressive. It's that keyboard, it's annoying. And then notifications. So these are the things that we're really focusing on adding to all of the apps. This is the new WordPress.com reader. Basically, it's a way to subscribe, particularly to longer form content, that's now available on the homepage of WordPress.com, will be coming to Jetpack dashboards and native on all of the mobile apps. This has been one of the fastest growing features we've launched in the past 10 years. Because really the first 9 years of WordPress were all about writing. And it isn't until recently that you could use WordPress to read as well. Again, obvious if you've used many of these social apps, but not so much. If you saw that go by, that was a notification. This went from 0 notifications a year ago to now coming up on 6 million a month. And again, that number is growing double digits every single month. People are, well, it's fun. In fact, I just got a notification. Thank you, Annika, whoever just pinged me. And all of this we're able to do because of Jetpack. So for example, push notifications require you to go through a centralized Apple server and have a server dedicated on your side that has sort of a constant contact with them. This is not just difficult, it is impossible to do if you're hosting your own blog. But I don't want people to have to trade off the cool features that they want for freedom, right? So again, with Jetpack, what we're able to do is say you can run your own site. We'll just create that little connection to Apple through one of our dedicated servers and be able to give you all these cool features without you having to sort of sign away your firstborn children and all the rights to your blog posts and pictures and everything like that to a commercial or advertising-driven network. So the main things we're focused on right now, who knows what NUX is, just out of curiosity? We say it's the opposite of sucks. NUX stands for New User Experience. Basically focusing on that first, call it 2 minutes. Right now, if you were to, let's say you'd never heard of WordPress before and you're like, oh, that's cool, and you put it on your phone and you want to start a blog that way, not a good experience. Sign up is still very desktop-centric. I think we're going to make it much better for tablets first, and then hopefully figure out something that people can understand and really comprehend what WordPress is all about from their phones as well. It's tricky because obviously we're about making websites, and one of the beauties of it is the huge wealth of themes and plugins. So actually having the themes be more responsive tells the story a little bit better. So you can sort of see what it looks like on your phone, see what it looks like on the desktop, and understand it even if you aren't in front of one. We're making the reader more native. Again, the notifications and the reader stuff that I showed you, we did all HTML5, and it's just too slow. Like, it's very frustrating to me personally, because I probably launched an app more than anyone else in the world. By making it native, we can make it faster and also add a little more fun to it, a little more pizzazz, and then just make it easier to write. So those are the big things coming for the apps. If you don't have it yet, you can type in this URL, and it will redirect your iDevice or Android or the imaginary Windows users to the appropriate store URL. Biggie, more money, more problems. Mobile users, mobile problems. Everything I just talked to you, the first two parts that are getting huge adoption, 94% of new themes being responsive, et cetera, all based on web technologies. Everything I just showed you with the native apps have had almost zero outside contributions outside of Automatic, even though every single one of those apps is open source. So we have this situation where the core WordPress software is having literally thousands and thousands of people contribute to working on it, which is one of the reasons it's been able to keep up or surpass any of its proprietary competitors. But the apps, basically none. There's just sort of a dozen or so people at Automatic working on them. Been thinking about this a lot. The best platform is actually Android. So people on Android, we do get a fair number of contributions. It is the most open of them. But when we talk to folks, a few things happen. One, on something like iOS, instead of contributing to the WordPress app, folks will make a competing one, and often charge for it, sort of in this idea that the App Store millions await just around the corner if they can create sort of a better, even WordPress app and post it. There's not as much incentive to collaborate because there's kind of this, you know, the gold, pot of gold and the lucky charms at the end of the rainbow, promised at least. So that's been one of the challenges. And two, on a closed platform like iOS, I mean, the kind of developers and people who hack on open source don't want to pay 99 bucks and have to run proprietary software just to hack on something, just to be able to build something. And then if they do build it, it's kind of a pain in the butt for their friends to use it or to distribute it. The distribution still goes through these monolithic channels. So we release every single one of our apps as GPL, even where that puts us into questionable status with the various App Store guidelines. We don't care. So the good news of that is if anyone in the audience is looking to learn mobile app development, it's probably the largest open source code base out there. And if while poking around, there's something that you see that could be made better or that you learn or that you want to get back, there's a lot of opportunity. The apps have grown, I think, over 600% in just the past year in terms of usage. So they're growing very quickly. It's kind of a fun way to have an impact. And also you can take your friends to the Apple Store and be like, I did that. It's kind of the coolest part about contributing to open source. Who's actually worked on open source before or contributed a patch or some code? Or that's cool. All right. That's what I got. I think we have a little bit of time for some questions and answers. Are you the fellow with the mic? Cool. So if you have a question, raise your hands. This lovely gentleman will run over to you. And I can tell you why mobile is so much harder than the web. Sorry, it's very bright here. About over here. And say your name, please. And your blog, if you have one.
Hey, Matt. I'm Kristen Grennan. And actually, I work with Sensible Reason. It's a blog, music, art, and politics. And I guess my question is, because we're talking about mobile, and I'm just not really familiar with building mobile apps and things like that. Is it the same if I build a mobile app for Android? If my blog, I make it so that it's compatible with Android, is it then I have to make something separate for iPads and then iPhones? And I don't really know. I just do content.
So on the web, like I said, these responsive themes, they're really more dependent on screen size than platform. And for better or worse, there's kind of a WebKit monoculture of all the browsers that are basically mobile browsers. So for your website, the good news is you don't have to do too much. You build it once, and it should work reasonably well in all of them. And if you use one of these existing themes, they're all tested. Now, one of the other reasons that mobile development and open source has been challenging for the applications, so not for your blog, but for like the WordPress application, is there's a complete balkanization in terms of the code base. The WordPress app is written in PHP, right, the web app. iOS 1 in Coca, Android in Java, they're all a little bit different, and they all have different frameworks. So that's, again, one of the challenges, is when we build a new feature, we have to build it at least 4 times to get it to everyone. How about right up here in front? Oh, cool. Oh, sorry. We'll get to you next.
If you haven't worked on WordPress before and you want to learn WordPress, how would you suggest you start by learning WordPress?
What was the question?
How would you start learning how to develop in WordPress or develop a website in WordPress?
That's a very good question. The first thing I would do is check out, well, for yourself or like a more advanced website. If you just want to get started, if like someone was like, oh, this guy doesn't seem like too much of a jerk, I'll start a WordPress website, go to WordPress.com. And you can get started literally in 30 seconds. And everything's kind of taken care of. If you'd like to start learning how to develop, get a web hosting account. And one of these, one of the $5 a month ones, DreamHost, Bluehost, any of these guys. And I'd recommend actually with one of the books. This is not personal, but WordPress for Dummies. Not saying anything about you. It's actually a really good book. And it walks you through both using it and a bit of the development at the end. And we're actually releasing a number of open source books. So we call them field guides on WordPress.org if you Google WordPress field guide. And we have some for core development, some for theme development, and more coming out. And they're basically open source web books that talk about everything you need to make a really cool website. The nice thing about learning developing for WordPress is you're not really learning skills specific to WordPress. You're mostly learning HTML, CSS, and a little bit of PHP. So things that are actually highly applicable if you want to do something completely else in the future or not. So that's one of the advantages. I meet a lot of people who learn to code PHP through WordPress, which is kind of neat, because I did too. How about right here in the front?
Hi, Matt. My name is Vicki Winters, and my blog is vickywinters.com. It's known as The Vicki Winters Show, so thanks for being my guest today.
Pop-up interview.
My question is, after the Tumblr sale, the rumor was that 72,000 blogs transferred over to WordPress from Tumblr. How much higher has that number gone in the past few days?
So 72,000 posts, which is not blogs, although some people use the word blog and post interchangeably, hence some media being confused. It's spiked higher than that a few times, and bigger, but not a spiky rate since then. Who knows? That could also just be people kicking the tires and trying it out. There was a bug in our Tumblr importer that we forgot about the first day or two. So it would import images, a single image as a gallery post. But we were able to fix that up and email everyone. And so since then, it's actually been growing really nicely.
And then the second part of that question is, do you think that Tumblr and WordPress have much in common?
I think they're highly complementary. So the beautiful thing about Tumblr and WordPress is that you don't have to choose one or the other. One of the features of Jetpack actually is that when you do a new post on your WordPress blog, it can send it to Facebook and it looks good natively. It can send it to Tumblr, it can send it to Twitter, and any other network in the future. So any place you have followers on one of these social networks, and I think of Tumblr a little more of a social network than a blog system, you can send your content there. And you don't have to tell people to be in one place. They can get the notifications wherever they are. But the nice thing about it is at the end of the day, they can come back to your site for the good stuff, where you have more control, you can do whatever you like. Thank you. How about all the way in the back? I'm just giving you a hard time. A single image as a gallery post, but we were able to fix that up and email everyone. And so since then, it's actually been growing really nicely.
And then the second part of that question is, do you think that Tumblr and WordPress have much in common?
I think they're highly complementary. So the beautiful thing about Tumblr and WordPress is that you don't have to choose one or the other. One of the features of Jetpack actually is that when you do a new post on your WordPress blog, it can send it to Facebook and it looks good natively. It can send it to Tumblr, it can send it to Twitter, and any other network in the future. So any place you have followers on one of these social networks, and I think of Tumblr a little more of a social network than a blog system. You can send your content there, and you don't have to tell people, to be in one place. They can get the notifications wherever they are. But the nice thing about it is at the end of the day, they can come back to your site for the good stuff, where you have more control, you can do whatever you like. Thank you. How about all the way in the back? I'm just giving you a hard time.